Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Monday, March 15th, 2021. This is a mashup with our friends at The Pitcher List, Nick Pollack and Alex Fast joining Eno and I on this episode. We promised this when the Baseball Pods Bracket Championship was infiltrated by bots last week. So we decided we would settle our disagreements with arguments about pitching, and that would be for the greater good, and we could talk about each other's
super
work.
pod.
And in case
we'll
you
put the
guys
echo
didn't
in
know,
post.
This is why I like working with Eno. We don't have to put the echo in post because he just does it for me. All the sound tricks I can't do, Eno just does them. Old-timey radio voice, echoes.
I am the soundboard.
Yeah, his favorite movie was Police Academy growing up, so he really turned it to...
That's right. I love that guy. I can't remember his name now, but I loved him.
Oh, man. So this will be a lot of fun, and these are two of our best friends in the industry. And it feels like I've known Nick and Alex a lot longer than I actually have. Like, Nick, I think I met you for the first time the year that Tout Wars was at the Staten Island Yankee Stadium, which was only 2016, 2017. It wasn't that long ago. You were kind enough to throw me some BP in the indoor cage. So that was fun.
Oh, man, I saw the video of me doing that, and it's painful. Like, I was trying to hold back, and it's just all lower half, and it's the worst mechanics ever. And I was so excited. I got to throw BB to you and Tristan Cockcroft. It's like, oh, my God, this is incredible. And I'm like, I have this video forever, and now I never want to look at it. It's really bad mechanics. But that was a ton.
The lesson is
fun.
Never hold back.
There it is.
Should have blown it by them.
I did it a sport, and, like, I should have done it to you, too.
And Alex, I think we met for the first time at First Pitch in 2019. The last time there was a First Pitch Arizona, I think, was the first time I met you, and the last time we all got on the road, really, it's amazing. It's been that long already.
Yes, that's when we got to know each other. The first time I think I ever had the pleasure of meeting you, I saw you in the corner at Foley's, and the only thing you might remember from it is just a very like wet handshake because I was so nervous. So it was just like, that's probably the only thing you remember is just like, who was that wet man? And why did he shake my hand right now? But you were very kind and you were very gracious. And then, yes, the first time we actually had a conversation where we got to know one another was at the First Pitch. And it was awesome. And yeah, I mean, we are thrilled and honored to be here.
And this is a dream for us. This is amazing.
There's a solid chance that anything that happens at Foley's after 10 o'clock is impossible to remember during a Tout Wars weekend. And we'll be sure to pour one out to Foley's the next time we get together. It's going to be strange eventually going back to Tout Wars and not having Foley's as our gathering place.
Yeah, that it really is going to stink. We're just going to have to find a new place to get stark raving drunk, I suppose.
And have burgers named after us,
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful.
Apparently,
I don't know that there'll be another bar that'll do that for us.
No. Wait, you don't think there'll be a bar in New York City that'll dedicate itself to fantasy baseball?
That was kind of a crazy unicorn situation, I think.
Yeah. I think we got pretty lucky that Foley's was there for us as long as Foley's was. Let's dive into it. Let's just get to talking about pitching. That's what people are here for, and we want to deliver on that. So we kind of took a look at all of our different rankings and found players that we disagree about. I want to start with Brandon Woodruff. Eno and I both like him. I thought I liked him more than anybody in the world, in part because I'm a Brewers fan, but Eno came out and ranked him even higher than I did. Alex, I think you've got him 14th overall on your pitcher rankings. So I believe out of the four of us, you are the low ranker on Brandon Woodruff. So I'll start with you. What are your concerns with him?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, before we get into it, there is nothing as nerve-wracking as trying to, when you see that you and Eno have a guy ranked high and then you see him ranked low and yours, you're like, well, I guess I'll just die. But when I actually think about how I actually feel about Brandon Woodruff, while I agree that 14 might be baking in too much of a little bit ceiling, too much of his floor, which I think my rankings did overall. The one thing that had me drop him a little bit is we've never seen him exceed 120 innings, right? We've already seen from the Milwaukee Brewers that they're going to cap guys at, I believe it was 100 innings from what they did in the past year, which would put him at 170, right? When it comes to the skill set, there's no argument there. I mean, obviously he has that fantastic fastball sinker combination that I think can be really elite for him and continue to be elite for him. But when you're this high in the rankings, I think it's really important to be a little bit more nitpicky, right? Because all these guys are going to be good for you. So as a result, when I see guys like, Luis Castillo, or I see guys like even Zach Gallen, who I think is going to be on an innings limit, but is still probably going to get more innings overall than Woodruff, in my opinion. Even a guy like Kershaw, a guy like Maeda, a guy like Nola, a guy like Giolito, all of those guys, to me, it would not really surprise me at the end of the year if their peripherals looked similar to Brandon Woodruff's and they got you 20 to 30 more innings. So for me personally, that's why I ranked him a little bit higher. What about you, Nick?
I mean, it's kind of funny. I think actually I have him at 15 at the moment. I'm updating my rankings this week, and I might be putting him at least one spot higher, as I am going to lower Gallen because of the recent news about they are going to limit him more so than I think we expected. And I'm starting to expect like 150 to 160 from Gallen as opposed to 170, 180. And with Woodruff, we're probably going to see like 175 and change. This is the hardest part, of course, of this preseason. You all know this, of course. Like, volume, like what are we actually getting from these guys? We don't really know. But I do think it is a safer bet that Woodruff at this point is going to have more innings. And it is really shocking that, when you think of Brandon Woodruff, you think of that four-seamer, right? That had a 17% swing strike rate last year. His sinker is also really good. Sub 70 WRC plus in both of the last two seasons, 2019 and 20 for Woodruff. And also it was really nice to see his slider just barely by 0.1% have a higher swing strike rate than his four-seamer. It's like, hey, all right, I know that my fastball is not supposed to be the whip pitch. Fine, I'll make it the slider by 0.1%. So that's a good thing to see, because we've kind of considered Woodruff as having a slider that he can get for strikes constantly. And, you've pointed out before the value of that, of getting sliders for strikes, not necessarily just with whiffs. It does make me like Woodruff. I just have a hard time really pushing him past, say, like 13 or so, because he really does have that hard cap, I feel, as opposed to someone like Flaherty that theoretically could go past 180. I think Maeda theoretically could go past there, and so on. And I don't think that Woodruff is so much better that we should be ignoring that.
Yeah, I think, I think we're all trying to feel around in the dark on the innings. And for me, that means a little bit more of throwing my hands up about it. When I tried to think about innings, I had this that third column of injury list percentile rank, and I kind of tried to use that, and then youth and 6-man rotations. So like extreme youth, I don't see Brandon Woodruff as like an extreme youth. Like I don't see him as a guy that they have to protect anymore. I think he's kind of more among the mid-career studs, Gallen, I guess we're finding out, is a little bit closer to kid gloves, and being careful with his innings. So I guess I just took a slightly different approach. I didn't see much injury risk with Woodruff. I didn't see a risk of going to 6-man because they barely can get 5 together in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And I think that's practical. I think that's also a practical concern, is like, if you are going to limit the innings, how are you going to do it? Is it going to be a lot of Drew Rasmussen starts, or and if that is the case and it's really close in the division, maybe you say, maybe Woodruff could do 175 this year, And I also think the over-under on 200 innings is 1.5. Like, we may have one person who has more than 200 innings. So I think 180 is the new 200. And to me, Woodruff is like 170, 175. So yeah, innings maybe. I ended up picking Buehler over him and knocking Woodruff down to 5 in my next update. And I suppose, but I wouldn't take Castillo over Woodruff as a pitcher. So I don't know if I really want the 5 innings. So I don't know. I hear your concerns. It makes sense now. It's not about his quality as a pitcher. It's more about the innings. Is what I'm hearing.
Well, I'm curious what you guys think about workload concerns in general. I mean, Nick, do you think the league as a whole is going to be as careful as our industry is suggesting to this point in draft season? Or do you think it's actually going to look more like a normal year than people think?
I would say the latter if I had to choose the two, because somebody needs to be throwing these innings, and a lot of these teams are going to be competitive where they're not going to be comfortable just throwing like a bullpen game or some random guy from
That's what I'm
AAA.
saying. Yeah, with the Drew Rasmussen idea.
Right.
Although I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Drew Rasmussen a little bit.
That's how we always feel. There's always that guy's like, oh wait, but there is something good about him, so let's not ignore that.
There's something good about it. Yeah.
Right. There's a reason why all these guys are major leaguers, and it's really fun to focus in on that. But yeah,
Right.
I get this idea that I've heard some people being really low on Walker Buehler because they don't think that he's going to get anywhere above 150 or so or 140. And in my view, is just, well, let's hold off a little on this because look, before last year, really, we never even said that a 6-man rotation would last. They never last, right? We start the season in a 6-man, and by like the second week, something happens, and now it's a 5-man, right? And we're going to see those situations again this year. They're going to try really hard as an organization to keep the 6-man. Seattle, going to keep it, right? I imagine the Dodgers are going to try something. The Angels probably going to keep it. But outside of that, I mean, teams are going to try it and likely fail. And
I could actually see Seattle's
needs to
falling
get it.
apart too.
Oh, really?
Like if Justin Dunn doesn't take a step forward, and Chris Flexen's a bit of a wild card. So like if both of those guys are in their sort of 20th percentile outcomes, then I don't know.
Yeah.
Then you have to call up Gilbert and Kirby, and then
they will
maybe don't want to do
right?
that yet.
Yeah. I think Mathers was saying like he would call up Gilbert by the start of May or so. I mean, look, they started Marco Vicious like all last year.
So they're okay with
that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
They're like, it's fine. We're just gonna do that. And they signed Paxton, which then we don't know how much we're gonna get out of him, but still I think they're gonna push it as much as they can over there.
I keep waiting for the Royals to announce they'll do it, but I don't know.
I would love that.
I think it would make sense. Yeah.
I think they're good.
Yeah, it would make sense for the Royals to do it. I mean, I'm curious to see when Daniel Lynch actually becomes a part of that equation for them. And they're obviously going to want to keep, they're going to want to relax with Chris Bubich. They're going to want to relax with Brady Singer. And then that leaves you kind of Mike Minor and Danny Duffy as the guys. They're like, oh, your arm fell off? Well, we can just glue it.
Brad Keller.
So, yeah, Brad Keller. And then also, I do think for what it's worth, we talk about, you brought up Drew Rasmussen. I still, I see Jake Junis with the cutter and I get a little intrigued. Because I think he's another guy that's going to be on the fringes right there as a 6-man who kind of comes in more frequently than we realize because he's going to be spelling some of these other orders to try and, keep their innings. And I think the other thing that's important to remember too is like, we don't have expanded playoffs this year, right? So there's not going to be as many teams halfway through the season trying to, actually, maybe we might be able to have a little bit of a run at this. So you see guys who, they're going to be teams like the Pirates, like the Tigers that are just going to be completely out of it. And I think we're going to see, as a result, those 6-man rotations stick a little bit more, especially the Tigers.
Yeah, but there is this funny thing that we're talking about around that's really interesting. Competitiveness versus the future, like then and now, right? Like, and if you look at it, the best pitchers for the most part are on good teams, right?
Yep.
It's almost like good pitching makes teams good.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, like Dean Kramer will have his innings limited this year.
Why don't you just relax? We're not 20 minutes into this thing and you got to take shots. It's ridiculous.
But you should be excited, Fast. It's Keegan Aiken is pretty cool, honestly. And then John Means is showcasing his higher velocity in spring training still. Yeah. There's some good things to talk about with the Orioles. And, we'll see how that Maikel Franco signing goes. I'm rooting for you, man. Maybe it's not a 0% playoff chance after all.
When you hear front office execs talk about limiting innings or innings plans, like Julian Merriweather, I heard, is on a 100-inning plan, right? And what that means to me is something. And Alex Reyes supposedly on a 100-inning plan. I think they think of these things in more block terms than like we think of. They think of things really finely, and this guy can get 162 this year or whatever. I think they're more like, this guy's a 100-inning guy, this guy's a 150-inning guy, this guy's a 200-inning guy, right? And so that's kind of how I like kind of group people, even though I don't think it's necessarily 200. I think it's 180, and right. I think there's a 180 grouping. I think there's like sort of a 160 grouping. And then there's a bunch of like 100 and 120s. So that's why I have Buehler 4.
All right. Well, here's what I've got for you guys for our next fight. I think we, as a group, disagree about José Berríos. I think both Eno and I think he's more like a top 20 sort of guy. I think both you and Fast have him down in that 30 to 35 range. Innings are key here, but I think it's more than that for me. It's not just the safety of expecting close to a max workload. It's not just trusting Minnesota as an organization that can get as much as it possibly can out of its pitching. It's looking at Berríos, seeing the increase in velocity in the shortened season, up more than a tick on both the fastballs. It's a true 4-pitch mix, and I think Eno's described it this way before. It's kind of a Hyun-Jin Ryu sort of approach where it's not just like 50 to 60% fastball usage and then 15% on each of the other pitches. It's actually like well balanced. So I think I'm looking at all these factors, mushing them all together and saying, you know what? This is going to be a year for José Berríos. Even if the Ks are still lighter than we would like them to be, I think because of the volume, he can offset some of the skills deficiencies if what we've seen in the past is what we're going to get here in 2021.
This is kind of nice because Fast and I, we disagreed before. We actually went toe to toe during the Fantasy Pros thing. And you had to defend José Berríos. So I want you to go first here. I want to see you now go against Berríos and be on the same team with me.
No, I'm gonna pull a pivot and I'm with you. I'm with them on Berríos here. I'm with our two dads on Berríos here. I think he made it. I'm sorry. I think he made a legitimate change last year. I mean, I think I've talked about this with Nick a bunch before. He moved further to the third base side than ever before. And I think the impact that it had on his curveball and what the shape of his curveball looked like is beneficial for him. And I think last year, what we saw in a kind of smaller sample size with his four-seamer isn't something that's going to stick. It had a 463 WOBA. That was his highest since his rookie year. Had a 209 WRC plus compared to a career 123 WRC plus. The BABIP was over 400. So I think if we see the swinging strike rate maintain on that curveball, and not if we're, some people might go look at the swinging strike rate and the curveball and they might see overall, and it's not that impressive. But actually, when you look at when he made that change, when he actually moved all the way to the third base line, which he maintained, by the way, in his spring training start, so I have good reason to believe he's going to keep doing it for this upcoming season. I think when you look at the swing strike right there, which is really good for him, it just allows him to get back to where he was with that fastball. I mean, I think he's still kind of trying to figure out what he's doing with the fastball. He was kind of putting it at the bottom or the heart of the zone last year, which leads me to believe that he didn't command it really well. The spin on it is pretty poor, but the efficiency is really, really good. And then I think there's one thing that we don't necessarily talk about enough, and you can take it or leave it. Wes Johnson is a very good pitching coach. Like he has worked wonders with a lot of guys before, and I still don't think that it's out of the question that Berríos can take that next step. So I think when you add all those things to the fact that he's likely going to be a guy who's getting a bulk of those innings at the end of the year in a weaker division, I'm with you. I still have him as a top 30 dude.
All right. Okay, Fast. Okay, fine. Make me do all the work. It's okay.
Sorry.
All right. I mean, the story of Berríos doesn't really change. Yes, I'm excited by the increased velocity over full tick, which is really good. But then you wonder, well, he did that, but then had a 1.3 whip and an ERA of 4. And it's kind of confusing. And you're talking about changing to, his where he's on the rubber close to the third base. So that would suggest to me, he's improving as the season goes on. Then you realize that his final 4 games, none of them eclipsed an overall swing strike rate of 11%. Well, beforehand, he had 18%, 14%, 13%, etc. And this is the story of Berríos, is that he just goes in and out. It's really about his curveball. Sometimes his curveball is the filthiest thing ever. And he does this for a month, and his curveball is performing well. He's high CSW rates, everything. And then it goes away for a month. And then it's just a heartache, especially as a fantasy manager. Like anyone that has rostered Berríos for a full season knows this. This is the story of Berríos. He has a month-long streak where he feels in rhythm with his curveball, and then he gets out of it. That's just what he does. And we've been having this conversation for like 4 years about Berríos. I remember in First Pitch Arizona, I sat on the panel with, for Sleeper in the Bust, and they were all like, oh, Berríos, amazing, number 20 and stuff. I'm like, guys, he's like 30 or so because he's always going to do this. And I don't know. It's just the same deja vu to me. I've yet to see a full year where Berríos actually puts it together consistently. The woes of that curveball just are gone. And I'm okay with the result at the end. I'm not saying that he won't help your fantasy team. I think he will. but I don't believe he can make that jump to be a definitive top 20 starter. Like all of the guys ahead of him that I have in the 20s, they all have that ceiling that is, oh yeah, I'm Zach Wheeler and my fastball is really good, but oh, I'm so close with that slider. And just to the previous 2 years, I also had a 23 to 25% strikeout rate, but now I just showed the ERA ceiling and I have got that whip next. You know, he has that ceiling of being that guy. Berríos is just, we're waiting still, and I don't want to pay for that. So I'm sorry, he's not in my top 30.
Yeah, I take one issue is that definitively in the top 20 for a guy, we have 19. I don't think he's definitively in the top 20. Yeah. Like the difference between 20 and 30, I think is not that far. I mean, I think there is a grouping there of other players that have upside and have some deficiencies. I think that the last time I feel really certain about a pitcher is maybe 15 with Gallen. And even there, we were talking about innings. So sure. For me, Berríos is buying floor. It is funny how he gets there, but he, before last year, had been a metronome. He has great command numbers, and usually, so I expect that walk rate to come back to earth. I expect him to throw a lot of innings. He showed really nicely in the innings, the injury list percentile that we had, sort of 27th percentile for injury risk. Not a lot of arm troubles. He doesn't sit down for arm troubles and things like that. So, yeah, I think I'd be buying floor with him. Like if I went cheap on pitching and my ace was somebody I was like excited about but wasn't sure about innings. Who's that? Scherzer maybe, or Kershaw.
Glasnow. If
you paired Berríos with him as a second, I feel like that'd be a good pairing. But if you had a different pitcher in the first one, then you could pick someone from around 20 that had a different profile. Like Glasnow's right there. Like Glasnow and Berríos, they're flawed guys. I think you're asking for either of them to do something they haven't quite done before.
Right.
And so, but they could also really glue together with a different first and second pick. So, I hear what you're saying. I think it's mean to call him a Toby, though. I think he's better than a Toby. I never.
Okay. I think he is too. Toby's don't have a 25% strikeout rate, so yeah, I'm not calling him a Toby.
Someone came on a Twitter thread and said Toby, and I was like, "What's a Toby?"
And what is a Toby? Now that you know,
feeling like a dad. It's Toby from The Office.
yeah. He gets the work done, but you don't really like that he's there.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
I love that as a description for most pitchers. I don't feel like Jose Berríos has earned the Toby label just yet. It lets me down again this year. Maybe he enters the Toby conversation in 2022. One guy that I think most of us like, but Nick, you're lower on him than most from what I can tell. Julio Urías. I've got him 25th. I mean, I think once you get into that 25 to 30 range, things open up a ton. You could argue guys in the 40 to 50 range against a lot of those pitchers, and I think you can make compelling arguments on both sides. What are your biggest concerns with Urías? I mean, innings, I think, is the main thing people worry about, but even though he made 10 starts during the regular season last year, we didn't see a great strikeout rate from Julio Urías. So is there a skills concern in addition to the injuries that are lurking kind of in the background?
It's kind of like an amalgamation, just a lot of things that just make me go, I was one of the things that made me so happy this time last year, and I was like unbelievably touched, that DVR, you mentioned hipster on the podcast, which is headache-inducing starting pitchers that stifle the entire roster. And it's this idea that you don't want to draft guys that in season are driving you nuts, that like, I don't know if they're going to be starting. I don't know how long they're going to go for. And when you're drafting a top 40 guy, starting pitcher, you want to know, hey, every single week, I'm going to put him in my lineup. It's going to be great. And if he's hurt, then fine. He's hurt, then okay. Then he's on my IL spot, but he's not taking up a roster spot on my team where I'm making having all this indecision. I would say Germán Marquez would be another one of those. Like, am I starting him this week? He's in Coors, but it's against the Diamondbacks. Like, what do I do? Right. And Urías, to me, especially with Dodgeritis, which is essentially like, we don't know say for like Buehler, Kershaw, and Bauer, we really do not know how they're going to use even David Price, who said, hey, I'll sit some out for the other guys. David, no, you're supposed to start. We need you to start like all the time. That's what we want you to do. The young guys will get their chance. So Urías is part of that crew for me. I mean, he closed the World Series. Like, they're showcasing that they're willing to use him in different opportunities already. And then, yeah, there is a little bit on the skill side. I mean, all of his pitches, changeup, slider, curveball really weren't the major whiff pitch last year. Changeup took a step back. Slider certainly took a step back, about 12% swing strike rate or so. And I'm a little concerned that he doesn't have that big breaker that really puts guys away. It's nice seeing fastball changeup. You generally don't see that kind of high upside guy with just fastball changeup. Typically, there is a breaker involved there too. I guess I'll say this. If Julio Urías was getting the same treatment as all the other studs we're talking about as far as workload, and we expect him to go every 5 days or 6 days or whatever, then I would have Urías probably around 25 or 30. So I think the skill set is good enough. I will mention that he's not a finished product in my head yet. And there are other guys that are, and I have to bake in a little bit more risk as well, just for the fact that he hasn't been that complete pitcher quite yet for a long season. So all that in mind, it was just like, you know what? I'll just deal with other things that I feel like I'll have an easier understanding of where they're at in the first couple of weeks of the year. And Urías gets pushed back towards about 49 or 50.
I mean, I'm gonna push back on the skills. The innings, I don't know, but yeah, I think the changeup is his best pitch or his best to secondary. But I think you wrote in your write-up something about the breaking balls not being what you expected or wanted from him. And I don't know, for his career, and this is, the samples now are on the 800 level by pitch type. He has below a 100 ISO on the change and the slider. And the four seam has a 116, which is amazing.
Yeah.
For a four seam.
Yeah.
So that's 3 really legit pitches. I don't know about the curve, but I think as a show me, it's fine. And that gives him 4 pitches to go to. It's a really nice mix. The command is there. I tend to think like if you have 3 really good pitches and a 4th, and you have really good command, you're going to be good. So I think he's going to be good. You can also make an argument that if you include the postseason numbers last year, his strikeout rate looks better. I know that he was in the pen, so it's it's hard to. It's not necessarily apples to apples, but I think that I think his strikeout rate was just a small sample thing. I think he's going to go back to the strikeout rates he had before, and he's proven effectiveness. The innings thing does give me heartburn. And that honestly is why I didn't push him harder.
it's hard. Like, I mean, about the slider is really the biggest question for me. We haven't really seen that be a definitive, like real big offering. Yes, it had a 46% strikeout rate in 2019 and a 15% swing strike rate, but an O swing of only 31%, zone rate of just under 30% on it. And I wanted to see like, oh, really amazing changeup. Like I love Urías' changeup, and when the fastball is fantastic, and that pairing is really, really nice. I wanted to see that one extra offering that made me think, okay, there you go. That's now 3 pitches. That's all you need done. I love the curveball as a show me. Get me some strikes, definitely. But that slider hasn't quite turned into that third like amazing offering.
Yeah, the whiff rate on it, I'm surprised to see, was average. Last year, 14.1. That's pretty much right on average.
The only thing that I want to add about that, I mean, I think there's some interesting things that kind of fit into the narrative, Nick, that you have about that breaking ball, and that he does seem to be messing with it a little bit. I think the breaking ball actually jumped up 4 ticks in velocity last year in the regular season. And then also, if you go to his, I believe it's his Brooks page, there's something really wonky happening with his slider in the last months of the season where there's a bunch of things changing. And I couldn't tell if it was just a sample size where, okay, maybe the Hawkeye data was a little bit funky, or if this was a legitimate change that he was actually trying to work on. Do you see it?
Yeah, it looks like the breaking balls converged.
Yeah, exactly. So it looks like he was trying to mess. I mean, this was something that I was taking a look at with Michael Ahedo, and we couldn't really get definitively to the bottom of, okay, there really wasn't a lot thrown here. So maybe it was a misread, maybe it was a calibration issue. But it kind
of worked. I mean, he got a 16% whiff rate on the slider.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
that new slider.
So
maybe he's only a 3-pitch pitcher and he's already turfed the curve.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking of. But if he does figure out, whatever he was trying to mess with, if only he had a guy in that rotation who had a good slider he could talk to. You know what I mean? If only there was someone there. Yeah, so I'm intrigued and it's something to keep track of moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I know it's such a cop out, but like, I'm so risk averse. Like I can't even walk out the door without having a panic attack. So I can't own Julio Urías,
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see that he's changing it. I mean, that makes me happy. Like addressing the fact that, okay, I'm doing something to hopefully get this better.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's interesting. And I think this could be a segue because I'm feeling attacked enough as is. Let's just keep the attacks going. I know I know you guys love me. I love you guys. So it's all good, but I am feeling attacked.
No, I hate that.
Absolutely not. Are you
no,
kidding
it's
me?
fine. It's fine. No, let's really jump into it. José Urquidy. So with Urquidy, and this is interesting because Urías and Urquidy change up first, right? So when I looked at the relationship between and it's like almost like a really dumb thing to do. But I looked at the relationship between a pitch type whiff rate and the overall whiff rate, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just correlated individual pitch type whiff rates to overall whiff rates. And the worst correlation was changeups. So the kind of the thought process I had after that was changeups are sometimes used for soft contact. Changeups may rely on the fastball more, and so therefore in an 0-2 count, a changeup when it is being anticipated may not have the same effect, sort of whiff effect, may not lead to strikeouts as often. And so you'll find guys that are change up first that are better than their projections and better than their FIP. And I think there's some soft contact effect there, but they also don't have great strikeout rates.
That reminds me of Jeremy Hellickson. That's all I can think of when I think
of
like
the guy I thought of was actually Jared Parker.
But yeah, okay.
But another modern guys.
No, I thought
guys
I
are
thought
like
of
Luzardo, Urquidy, Urías.
John Means, and when in his All-Star year, he wasn't getting whiffs on the fastball. He was just getting weak contact on that changeup all the time. But you say that we're riding you too. Like you looked up all this stuff. I'm like, one time I Googled baseball savant, and I found you have the real data here. I would really
no. You I discovered on air that Urías turfed his curveball. I love it.
You guys share Eno's love for José Urquidy, which I think is a shared love on our pod. Like I believe in him because I saw what he did upon arrival in 2019. I think that's more in line with the strikeout rate we're going to get, 24%. I think he can be a sub-4 ERA guy with a good whip. Maybe the strikeout rate doesn't have another level above that, but I do think despite the changeup being his best offering, because he's got 4 pitches in the arsenal, I think, and good command, that gives him a lot of margin for error. Clearly, there's a huge need for him in the Houston rotation, too. The price is creeping up. So, A, do you guys like him? We can start with you, Alex. And B, are you willing to pay the rising price on him? Because it seems like some other people really like him, too. ADP since March 1st is now inside the top 200, right around pick 185 overall.
Yeah, I fully admit that I could just be a guy who, like, when it comes to Framber Valdez, José Urquidy, Christian Javier, I could just be a guy who doesn't quite see it. And like, listen, that organization is better at outputting pitchers than one would ever believe, right? When you have that kind of pitching coach, then they're going to output good stuff. But for me, when it comes to Urquidy, we can start with the fact that he hasn't thrown more than 150 innings pitched over the course of a season ever. So I would really be surprised to see him come close to that, considering he put up under 30 in 2020, just under 30. It's funny because 14th in whiff rate in that time, 24th in exit velocity, 6% in K rate, and 22nd in expected ERA. I worry a little bit about that fastball. It has potential, and we've seen some really nice swinging strike on the pitch. It's not great. It's like, I think it's still sub 8, but it's not bad. I think the problem is sometimes he can leave it at the top of the zone. And guys just can absolutely punish it. And when you're doing that in a stadium like Minute Maid, where, you know, it's like one of the best offensive, you know, fields in all of baseball, that scares me a lot. 51% hard hit rate just doesn't really sound all that exciting to me when it comes to that four-seamer. So yeah, I think sometimes the command can be a little bit of an issue too. So while I understand, while people take him, he's just never been the guy that I'm kind of obsessed with. How about you, Nick?
I mean, I think I'm going to be raising him. I have him at, I think, 57 right now. I probably will put him inside my top 50. I loved seeing you so high in Urquidy. I thought that was really cool. Because I mean, 2020, Urquidy had COVID and never got into any sort of rhythm, and he had like 30 innings or so. That was just such a lost season. His curveball and slider were both easy double-digit swing strike rate pitches in 2019. Actually, I think hinting at 20, and they were both sub 10% this past year. I mean, I don't believe this for a second. I think it's such a small sample we've seen of Urquidy in 2020, and it was very small in 2018 as well, but we got a better representation of who he is, and he's sown with 4 quality pitches. Even if you want to say like his fastball isn't quite as good as others, fine, then 3 really good secondary pitches that have different movement profiles, and that's really cool. I mean, you know, I think you were talking about it, like his movement profiles like being so drastically different. And
but if you could like just write down in PitchFX the perfect pitcher, it would like the only thing I would change is the velo number on the 4-seam.
Yeah, and it's funny, like when you look at the other like Houston guys, you know, Christian Javier, I don't think has nearly the same polish at Urquidy as Urquidy.
He's got command issues, yeah,
and also stamina too with Javier, which is kind of crazy. Like he starts the game at 93, then goes down to 91. And Urquidy, I think, is much more, you know, I keep finding myself saying finished product a lot.
He's thick.
Yeah. But I mean, more of just like his actual ability. But yes, sure. He's not that Tristan McKenzie out there, you know? But yeah, Urquidy,
no, I think he's got some innings in those thighs. Is all I'm saying.
Right. And Dusty Baker will use them, you know?
Yeah. Well, but that's so then over under 140 for each of you, for all 3 of you on José Urquidy.
Slightly above.
Slightly above over. DVR. Where do you have him?
I'm easy over 150 plus. But yeah. And I think at that range, you're not really expecting much more than 150 from pitchers you're drafting near the back of the top 200.
Right.
Because a lot of guys are just getting called up or they're going through it for the first time. I mean, even I like Tristan McKenzie a lot. I think they're going to have to be a little bit careful with him just because he had that lat injury that cost him a good chunk of 2019. Yeah, the years are all sticking together now.
Yeah.
So I'm at like 150 plus on Urquidy. I don't think they have to baby him, but I think he'd be in the group of pitchers that when you get to the All-Star break, when you get to a certain spot in the schedule where you got maybe an extra off day, maybe they manipulate the schedule to keep him from getting up into that 180, 190 range because they don't want him to go too far over his previous max.
Sure. I mean, it's also,
I will say he's never thrown over 150 in his career, even with the minor leagues.
He's got to do it at some point, and they need people to do it. I mean, Lance McCullers, we hope, can do over 152. And I mean, specifically 152, not 153. But it's, I mean, there are questions around that rotation, especially with not only Framber, but also Forrest out. And I feel like Dusty's going to let him go. The other question I have is he gets the Athletics twice to start the year. Like, I think I'm okay starting Urquidy for both, but you got to think, I mean, if you are in a fantasy league and you wouldn't, then I would pass on Urquidy. You know, if you're gonna draft a guy and then
because they're gonna see each other a lot, I would have no hesitation.
Yeah, I would start him too.
I would almost circle that date. I think he'll strike out a bunch of A's.
Well, then I love it. There you go, Urquidy. I'm in.
Yeah, it's not quite Alec Mills' early season schedule.
Brewers and Pirates, baby, let's go, Mills.
Alec Mills, 20 strikeouts in his first 2 starts. It seems like it's already written at this point. Growing up, cereal was one of the best parts of being a kid, but I had to give it up because I realized it was full of sugar and junk that I really shouldn't eat. Thankfully, there's Magic Spoon. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, and only 140 calories a serving. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. Plus, we've got exciting news. Magic Spoon is releasing 2 amazing new flavors this month for a limited time only. We're talking about cookies and cream and maple waffle. And if that isn't the most comforting, indulgent combination, then I don't know what is. This is the ultimate treat yourself combo, so make sure you get some while you can for a limited time, or build your own box. Available flavors to build your own custom bundle are cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, and cinnamon. If you're listening in Canada, Magic Spoon now ships there as well. Go to magicspoon.com/rates to grab the new limited edition cookies and cream, maple waffle, or a custom bundle of cereal to try today. Be sure to use our promo code RATES at checkout to save $5 off your order. This offer is now good anywhere in the US or Canada, but only when you use our code at checkout. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/rates and use the code RATES to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. With opening day just a few weeks away and March Madness upon us, the sports calendar is officially heating up, and that means now's the perfect time to take your sports fan couch experience to the next level by getting in on the action yourself. The Athletic has partnered with BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, to bring you the latest odds and exclusive offers to bring you closer to the game than ever. Subscribers of The Athletic get in-depth analysis from our newsroom, plus insight into the latest betting trends and odds from BetMGM's team of experts, getting you the context you need to nail your next pick or parlay. I love the Astros at plus 2,200 to win the World Series. Right now, BetMGM is offering Rates and Barrels listeners a risk-free first bet up to $600. Just sign up at BetMGM.com. Use the bonus code RATES to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. This offer is for new customers. That's a risk-free first bet up to $600 at BetMGM.com with the bonus code RATES. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-717 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada.
Woo. That was some Howard Dean right there. We're going to Tennessee. We're going to Nevada.
I thought you were going to do a General Mills segue into that cereal.
To Alex Mills.
I really just want there to be one number for people who need help with that problem. It'd be really helpful. If one number did
seconds off the end there.
I just think for society's well-being, it shouldn't matter. You should be able in any state to call the same number and get help with a gambling problem. That seems like a good thing for everybody.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Maybe we could have that someday. Maybe. But 100% happiness guarantees. Huh? I'm thinking about that right now. We got to put that on somebody. We got to put that on. Can we put that on? Aaron Civale?
Yes.
Does anybody want to put that on?
Yes.
Aaron Civale, a 100% happiness guarantee. Who wants to make that
100%.
claim right now? Nick, I think you want to go first.
Okay. I mean, this is Fast's boy. I'm not going to take any of this away from him. I can't do that.
No,
ahead,
please
Alex.
start. So you're smarter than me.
Absolutely not. Okay. I'm going to give quick. New arm circles exciting.
Okay, go ahead.
Four seamers getting better, actually. They're going to start incorporating that this year. Really nice cutter that he throws for strikes. Curveball that gets whiffs. I think it's all here with Civale, and the fact that you have Terry Francona, chewing on his toothpick instead of taking him out of the game. That's great for me. That's great for fantasy managers going 6 innings of starters.
Indians leave their guys in, man.
Yeah, they really do.
Oh yeah.
Over the last 3
Unreal.
years, they had the second most innings from their starters.
Yep. So I think Civale as a whole is, and if you take away the last start of the year, he's a sub-4 ERA. If you want to even look at that small sample of 2020, I think he's made some changes. Fast can probably tell you more about those changes, but I think the best of Civale is yet to come.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, there's a few things that come to mind. I mean, one, I've heard you bring it up plenty. The Indians are the best at game prep in the league. probably, right? And that's a great place to start. But when it comes to, and that's definitely a bonus, but when it comes to Civale overall, I think we're just looking at a foundation that's so there, and he has so many weapons that are going to allow him to take the next step. You know, I'm a coward, but the one thing that I did that was kind of bold was put him over Zach Plesac in my overall rankings, because I really do believe at the end of the year, it wouldn't surprise me if he finished higher. His sinker, if we start with that, it's a CSW machine, and he really is just fantastic with it. He had a 30% CSW on his curveball, his changeup, and his sinker, with a near 30% CSW on that cutter. The fact that he's going to be able to attack the zone like that with so many different pitches just means that, like we said, he has that really high floor that he can build upon. All he has to do, well, there's a few things that he can do, right? He seems to have shown a reticence to be able to throw that curveball in 2 strike counts. And I think he wouldn't really have any problems if he just went back-to-back curveball on 1 strike and 2 strike counts. He could have a lot of success there. The other big thing is he has this new splitter. This new splitter could absolutely be huge for him, right? So when you take the fact that he has the whiff-getting pitch in the curveball, and he's got this new changeup splitter combination that has shown to be effective in these new spring training starts, it shows that he can command the zone with it. I just think the sky is really the limit for him, right? I mean, we're talking about a dude, it's kind of like a dream scenario. You already have his ability to command the zone. This isn't a guy that we're really going to have to worry about command over the course of a season, right? So if either that curveball or that splitter or the cutter or the 4-seam, which he may be increasing this year, shows the ability to be that action pitch for him, the sky's really the limit for him.
And one thing I really want to add there is I remember freaking out when he was against the White Sox and throwing cutters instead of fastballs. Like his first 40 pitches, he threw 1 sinker. And the ability to be able to use that cutter effectively inside the zone and then save the sinker for what I think should be, in general, obviously it's a very broad stroke of the brush, but I love sinkers when they're thrown like 10 to 15% of the time as a surprise pitch, changing it. You know, you can come inside to a lefty and surprise in the inside corner, or maybe get a ground ball all of a sudden. And Civale is able to save that 2-seamer and now actually have a good looking 4-seamer too that gets a lot of ride. That whole combination, I think, can really work out in 2021 for Civale.
Yeah, I mean, you said the sky's the limit. For me, I'm a little bit worried that the fastball is bad. The primary fastball is bad, I think. And I've fallen in love with so many people with bad fastballs that I just feel burned sometimes. Who's that guy? Whitley.
Chase Whitley?
Chase Whitley, man. Oh, his secondaries were so good. His fastball was so bad. And so I see the sinker and like a 3% whiff rate. I see for lifetime a 151 ISO on the sinker, 419 slugging. I saw that same sequence with the cutter and was like, oh, well, now I have to rebalance what I think of him, because maybe the cutter is his fastball. Right. And so I like how you talk about action versus command pitches and stuff. And so I think that for some people, the cutter is an action pitch. And for some people, the cutter is like a command pitch. And if they're both for him, that's fine. But if I have to recalibrate, if the cutter is going to be his foundational fastball, and maybe it is, and then the sinker becomes more of a kind of a situational pitch that he gets called strikes with when they're not swinging. And so he gets them swinging with the cutter. He gets them swinging and missing with the curve. But you know, I don't know that the change is such a big deal that he would add a changeup that's good. He had a 15% whiff rate on the changeup last year. So, I mean, if he's adding a splitter, is he going to have 2 changeups, or is it going to replace that old changeup, which seemed like it was decent anyway? Yeah, so it all comes back to the fastball for me. If he's a sinker first guy, where I don't love the sinker.
Yeah, totally fair.
It's not. It doesn't have good movement, even for sinkers.
Yeah.
The fact that he pulled it back last year, and it's already changed his arm.
That's why I started pushing him up in my rankings. But he started at a low place because I was like, "Here's a bad fastball guy."
Yeah, well,
Corey Kluber is a bad fastball guy.
Right. Carrasco, it's what Cleveland does. Plesac doesn't have a great one either.
Yeah.
But I remember actually bonding with you about this in First Pitch Arizona, where we weren't in on Civale at that point. That was like October 2019. But yeah, the fact that Civale pulled away from that sinker to focus on the cutter, and from what we've seen so far this year, and we were talking to him that he's focusing on 4-seamers now with that shorter arm circle and feeling better in that timing. I think that is a step in the right direction. And from what we saw last year, I mean, I'm pretty much cutting out that horrible like 8 earned run start at the end. That was still a serviceable pitcher. Like he was very helpful for most of the year. And I think now we're going to get a step forward from that. So that's why I'm in favor here.
His last thing real quick is his first 5 starts, 2.91 ERA with a 2.72 FIP and a 3.62 SIERA. And then I think the way that he started to utilize that cutter, which was more up in the zone, where it almost kind of looked like a mistake, but that seemed to be the way that he wanted to utilize it. That leads me to believe that it isn't necessarily going to be that action pitch for him. It seems like it's able to, it's a command pitch for him, which is really exciting for me to see. And it's also like almost an easy out pitch for him. You can kind of use that paired with the sinker. So, but I think overall, like when we're having this conversation about a guy who has all these weapons that he can lean into, and he's kind of this scrappy dude who's going to fight, you know what I mean? He doesn't have one pitch that he's just, he's not a McCullers where he's like, all right, I'm just going to go get an out with this pitch right now. Right. I'm a sucker for those dudes, those like kind of scrappy fighters.
This is how you're describing Spencer Turnbull to me, man. Like I see a bunch of pitches. I see command. Maybe he's not in the right place for it, but his park at least helps him a little bit. And his division's not bad. So, but I see a lot of pitches. I see command. I see a lot of pitches, and I see the opportunity to maybe tweak one of those and go further. So I have them ranked similarly, and I see them as guys who the floor is actually okay. The floor is good, and there is ceiling. So they're good, but they haven't established anything like, to get into the 40s for me, you have to have established something. And I'm not sure that I've seen enough from either of those two guys to say like they've established a certain baseline.
Yeah. And I really like about this argument though, is that you guys are bringing more than my simple, I believe in Cleveland's ability to develop pitching. Therefore I will round up on Aaron Civale. Like you're seeing that's
reasonable,
but you're seeing the proof of it already. Like
yes,
you're
but Adam Plutko does exist.
Well, I mean,
Josh Tomlin does exist. I'm not saying those are actually, they probably were good outcomes for their stuff, but I'm just saying good outcomes could still mean fantasy,
Right.
I wonder if that actually describes Sandy Alcantara. And Nick, I think you're the highest of all of us on him. I don't think anyone on this pod would be in a position to say, I don't believe in Sandy Alcantara. I think we're all reasonably close. But Nick, I think you had him the highest at 33 on your rankings. Totally possible I'm crossing up one set of rankings with another at this point. I've got a million tabs open, but hey, we're trying to walk and chew gum and podcast at the same time. So
you're killing it. I have him at 33. You got it right on.
There you go.
Boom. 33. So you're the high man on Sandy Alcantara. The big problem for many people is that we haven't seen the strikeouts yet. When you watch him pitch, the stuff's good. Like it sure seems like there are some more strikeouts to come there. So what is it that gives you confidence that Sandy Alcantara could take that leap this year?
Oh man. Okay. So I want to establish a couple things. One, I mean, I think I was saying this pretty much earlier, and I would just want to reinforce it. Innings are a huge part of my rankings and I think that Sandy Alcantara is someone that the Marlins are going to say, okay, we need you to be the rock while we develop Sixto Sánchez and Eliezer Hernandez. And they're probably going to be looking at Pablo Lopez a bit for this as well. But I think Alcantara, the guy who went 197 innings in 2019, is going to be that foundation for that rotation, which means that he gets a boost inherently if he has ratios that I trust. And for Alcantara, I do. I think he has such a good sinker. It's one of the rare sinkers I actually like, because he does such a good job of keeping it arm side and then falling off of the plate. And it's at 96, 97. I mean, this is one of the better sinkers you'll see out there. And you pair that with a slider and changeup that I haven't really seen both of them be dominant at the same time. But in every start, one of them is working, and that's all he really needs to do. Just get one of those going. He had a 23% strikeout rate last year. I think he can have a 25% over the course of season as he continues to develop each of those pitches. And when you add it all up, I mean, the way that I go about my rankings as well, on top of the innings, is like in a 12-teamer, and that's what these ranks are essentially. 12-teamer head to head in Roto, really. You're trying to find 4 guys that you trust, that you're not going to drop, that these are the 4 guys you're starting every single time out. And then the other 4, you are likely going to be dropping during the year. Like in a 12 team, you have 23 rounds. Look back at previous drafts and you're going to realize, after the 14th round, like I only kept like 25% of those guys. And you have to put yourself in a position where, I said it before with the hipster and stuff. I want to make the decision in April if I'm going to be going after, say, like on the waiver wire was Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn and Mike Soroka and Brandon Woodruff and Zach Allen. That's all from 2019, all on the waiver wire during that season. So Alcantara to me is part of that crew, but right. I get Alcantara. I'm holding on to him for the rest of the year. So I push him up into the 30s. I feel more secure with him than some of the guys in the 40s. So that's why I have him a little bit higher up. But I think the initial foundation of the fastball and the idea that his slider and change can also continue to grow is why I'm this confident in him.
Can you believe they told him to throw the four seam more? Like what?
Yeah, I mean it's like the exception with the sinker. It's just that good of one that normally I would say throw the four seam more, but I just love that pitch. It's so good.
Yeah, but they watch him all the time. Like this should have been really obvious really quickly. I agree with most of that. I see sure things ahead of him too, in terms of, I guess maybe not in terms of innings, not all of them. I'm looking at Tyler Mahle now with your words in my ear, and I'm like, yeah, he should be ahead of Tyler Mahle.
I really like Tyler Mahle. I like the fact that the slider was all of a sudden going down last year. And four-seamer command is amazing. Yeah. But he hasn't gone like a lot of innings before. And I don't know how much Cincinnati's going to let him go this year. I hope it's like.
Also, if any of those home run issues show up again in that ballpark, it's going to be terrifying. I like Mahle as well, but that scares me.
Let's talk about someone I know that Alex likes, Josh Lindblom, buried in my rankings right now, ticking up a little bit because I think he's pretty safely in that rotation to begin the season. But what is it that gives you confidence that Lindblom can do better things in year two in Milwaukee? I mean, the whip wasn't bad last year. It was just the ERA that was the problem. The ERA was up over 5, temporarily moved to the bullpen, moved back in. We saw plenty of strikeouts. So how does he consolidate everything and turn in a good year for us, kind of in the back of the top 100 among pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot, I think last year was a big transition year for him, right? I mean, not only necessarily because of the pandemic, because coming over from the KBO and really having to adjust to what is a different style of baseball in the MLB. I think what gets me excited about him is like, he's just like a grande Yu Darvish when it comes to how many pitches he has. You know what I mean? Like you have to like scroll down a page to see how many different grips that he has. And that's actually really exciting to me because if something isn't working when he's warming up, there are other things that he can rely on. There's definitely plenty of floor when it comes to Josh Lindblom. I've been burned before by one Matthew Boyd, and I understand that floor is a real thing. But when it comes to Josh Lindblom, what gets me excited about some of the changes that he made in this offseason is he said, hey, I'm going to prioritize spin efficiency on my four-seamer, right? And if there's one thing that I've learned talking with pitchers this past year is that they get very excited in the offseason, and when spring training comes around, they definitely fall in love with the narratives that they're trying to push, and that's great. They should. They need that confidence. Lindblom backed it up with actual results. I've watched every spring training start that he's had so far, and the spin efficiency that increased on that four-seamer has allowed him to locate more on top of the zone with that four-seamer, which has made that curveball that he has really, really nice. When he pairs those pitches, which he's gone back to back with a few times now, it increases how many swings and misses it has the ability to increase how many swings and misses he's going to get on that curveball. Eno can correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to movement profile on a bunch of his pitches, there's some really dirty stuff there. I mean, between the splitter that he has, between that curveball that we already talked about, he's got the ability to do it. I think if I'm, taking a step back, like the fastball still scares me. This isn't a guy who's going to be able to rely on velocity, right? It's never going to be a guy who's going to be able to rear back and do it. I think there were, some issues where he couldn't throw certain pitches like that slider for strikes. And I think that would really benefit him to be able to have that command. But I think at the end of the day, at the back end of a draft where he is going right now, he's ultimately a guy that you can get for free. He's going to give you that nice K upside. He's also going to give you probably a good amount of innings, right? This isn't one of those guys that I think they're really going to rest, right? I think along with, it really would not surprise me if at the end of the year, Josh Lindblom had more innings than Brandon Woodruff. It just wouldn't surprise me. It just seems like Woodruff's a guy who's going into his second year of arbitration, right? I think they're going to be a little more precious with him than they are with Josh Lindblom. So yeah, I think that's some real nice sneaky upside to get at the back end of a draft.
I don't want to. Yeah, sorry. You go.
No, what's up?
No, I don't want to step on fast at all. I will note that Lindblom didn't go 6 innings once last year. And and it was essentially like 5 or 4 innings in those starts. So I hope that he can have the IPS that the innings per start that Woodruff has. That's the one concern I do have with him.
That comes with the command, I think. If he can find the command, which it looks like he's been able to do, I think we'll see that bump up a little bit more.
I thought you were about to say something about IPAs. Yeah.
Never. I don't like hops. Get out of here.
But yeah, a couple things come to mind when I look at his profile. Yeah, he had a below average command plus, so I am worried about that to some extent. But he didn't have like a reliever level command plus, and that's actually how I think of command plus a lot, is in shelves. Because if you have a below 90, then maybe you're Josh James, and we were all super excited about how great Josh James's stuff was, but he had a below 90 command plus, and when you get below 90, it's all relievers. It's all relievers and Dinelson Lamet and Tyler Glasnow and like 95% relievers. So he's above that. So I think the command, yeah, it could fluctuate a little bit. It could be good. When I look at his pitches, sometimes I think of that old adage: if you have 3 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I'm just wondering what the out pitch is like. And the slider does get good whiffs. And that and the four seam were the ones that stood out whiff rate wise, right? Because the four seam has a good ride, has really good ride. So if he's going to add more ride to it, then I think he has 2 legit pitches. But all the rest of the pitches underperform what I kind of expect. Like less than 10% whiff rate on the changeup, 10% whiff rate on the curve, 10% whiff rate on the cutter. It is exciting that he has so many. And yeah. I think there could be a little tweak that could go a really long distance for him, I think.
I definitely am hoping that the increased efficiency on that four-seamer is going to benefit all of those pitches. You know what I mean? That's definitely the hope. And at the end of the day, that's a hope. You know what I mean? That's the gamble that I'm taking. I will say, too, when you look at that walk rate in the past, even, a couple of years ago, it was like barely above 5 ever in the KBO. And that's a different league, of course. And I'm not saying, well, of course, it's going to be great when he comes to the MLB. But it's also a league where those guys are going to wait you out and they've got good eyes and they can also make contact with everything. So to me, that speaks more to a reticence to pitch to the way that he was going to pitch in the MLB. I would be surprised if that continued this year. But once again, these are all the asterisks that fantasy owners are going to have to make their own decisions about.
It's a really good play on one of the most basic and powerful stats there is, which is strikeouts minus walks. I mean, that like 27 and 8, like that's really good. So yeah, I think that alone had me pushing him up. I've got him now at sort of about 110, and I think he's super interesting. There also, you just mentioned it, and I found evidence of a gaijin strike zone in Japan. That foreigners got a different strike zone, and I actually think that to some extent that helps pitchers that go there to come back with better command.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they just have to be really have to be finer.
So are they okay? So is it tighter for a foreigner? Interesting.
Yeah, I think yeah.
And I'm not trying to point fingers at Japan and be like, ooh, we had the same problem. I don't know if you guys have looked into what umpire biases are, but like there's a lot of them. There's absolutely. A bias. There's a racial bias in umpiring. There's a star bias. Yeah. Veteran bias. Yeah. So these are human beings. I'm not trying to point fingers, but I'm saying that like we've seen a fair amount of players go over there. Like Merrill Kelly came back with improved command. Michaelis came back with improved command. I think that's why I did the research, was for Michaelis.
I think Colby Lewis too, even before that.
Lewis, Let's see how Flexen does.
Yeah, good point.
Man, Flexen is buried in my rankings. I mean, he is free. He's going to be a week 1 fab pickup at the current rate. We'll see if anything changes between now and opening day. Stressed out and can't relax? Take an Eagle Moon Hemp CBD gummy to unwind. Use the code ATHLETIC for 30% off CBD site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com/shop. They already have the best prices online and in stores. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on these discounts. It's 30% off site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com/shop. All Eagle Moon Hemp products are vegan, low sugar, use organic practices, and are made from award-winning crop. And just in case you didn't know, CBD is not marijuana. It does not get you high. CBD may help to relieve pain, nausea, seizures, anxiety, and depression. Get 30% off all CBD products site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. Their products are pure, proven, lab-tested, and superior to other CBD on the market. And the best part is they're way less in price. Throw in the discount code and you're practically getting a product for free. That's eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. Try them out while winning free products. Just go to their Facebook page and leave a review or follow them on Instagram. A winner is chosen each week and sent a free product. Check them out and let us know how you like them. That's eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. This episode of Rates and Barrels is sponsored by Blue Chew. Blue Chew is making waves and bringing more confidence to the bedroom. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew's tablets combat all forms of ED. It can help men gain extra confidence when it's time to perform. Blue Chew is an online prescription service, so no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. And it ships right to your door in a discreet package. The process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers. Once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. So if you can benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code RATES at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code RATES to receive your first month free. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. All right, let's get to some ADP toss-ups. We call it Would You Rather when we usually do this.
Would you rather?
See, I told you guys, I don't have to ever do sound effects stuff. It's the best editing job in the world, never having to put a drop in. He just does them on cue. It's incredible. So we'll look at March ADPs in the NFBC, throw out some pitchers with similar prices, and get a feel for where we as a group stand on these particular pitchers. We'll stay outside the top 20 at this point, since there's more fun to be had, I think, once you get past that group. Let's go to the back part of the top 30. Max Fried versus Hyun-Jin Ryu. And I will start with you, Nick. Who do you prefer between Fried and Ryu?
I'd probably take Ryu because he's safer. I do recognize there's a higher ceiling likely with Fried just because the Blue Jays got Ryu knowing, hey, we want you for 150 innings in 2020. Like, they expected him to get hurt and they wanted to take care of him. And I feel that will probably, carry over into 2021 to some degree. While Fried is probably loose to go, I haven't quite seen the fastball and curveball command I want. Slider is good, but it's still a little, I need a little bit more development time with Fried. I think like 2022 Fried is going to be better than Ryu, but I think Ryu is a little bit safer at this moment.
How about you, Alex?
I agree. I actually think it is Ryu, but for a contrarian point of view for Fried, I'll say Fried just for fun, because I'm a little bit worried about Ryu in Dunedin. And I'm a little bit worried about when it comes up to Buffalo, a little bit worried about that, both of those parks. Not that he's all of a sudden going to extremely regress, but when I think you take those concerns, you add in the injury concerns, those kind of pile up to me to give, in this contrarian view, Fried the advantage.
He doesn't mean it, guys. He doesn't mean it.
I could see it. Like I this is one of those rare veterans where I don't think innings is a positive part of his package. You know what I mean? Like you're not like gonna pick Ryu for innings,
right?
I don't think, especially not in this comparison. I like if you like just innings, who? Fried, right?
Fried, yeah,
definitely.
Because of multiple arm injuries from Ryu in the past. I mean, that's pretty scary.
His groin ripped clean off the bone. Like
you
it was
love
like
that
ripped.
one. You always go for that one.
That's insane. It's like a piece of chicken. Like it's insane to me.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you? Okay,
I don't know. It's just wild.
I mean, he got hurt blinking to get the catcher sign once. That's why I joke with Ryu. I mean, look, they got him with 150 entering 2019, right? Or entering 2020. They probably will push it a little bit more, but I mean, it is kind of close. But I still give it to Fried. Yeah.
Well, I share the concerns about the command. I had Fried just a couple ahead of Ryu, and I'll take him. And I had Ryu in an injury tier. Ryu, Glasnow, and Carrasco were all 80+%, 80th percentile or higher in my injury list. Carlos Carrasco has shown that I've got to push him down some more. But yeah, so I would take Fried.
I think I'm the dummy that wants Ryu because I don't trust the control for Max Fried. I think that's still a possible trouble spot. I think the whip could be a little bit bumpy. You're going to get Ks. You're going to get wins. I'm not worried about the innings, but slight preference for me with Ryu because I think the ratios come out a bit better. Will be interesting to see what happens with the Jays in their home park, though. If they ever get back to Toronto, that seemingly would be better than ending up in Buffalo for the second half or most of the second half of the season. How about this one? Just outside the top 100 overall, Chris Paddack, who everybody loved this time last year, versus Ian Anderson. We'll go around the other direction. We'll start with you first on this one,
It's kind of interesting when you look at it through the lens of stuff and command. I've got Ian Anderson at 109 stuff and 93 command, and I've got Chris Paddack at 96 stuff and 113 command. And I think it tells a picture of, Anderson. I don't know. I don't think that people have looked at his minor league numbers very hard because there is definitely some risk with Ian Anderson. And yes, it might have something to do with the low spin curveball. I don't know. Might have something to do with the changeup outperforming its movement profile too. But it's more his walk rates and home run rates in the minor leagues. Like, he has a command issue. And if there is some wobble in there and he's going to go out, then, it could look bad for a little bit. Maybe he gets it back and then by the end of the year, he's fine. But I have it after I said all that. I have Ian Anderson higher. I'd take Ian Anderson. What I want to know is what the rise is on Paddack's fastball right now.
Yes. Oh, no idea.
Why don't we have TrackMan for every spring training stadium?
Because we can have nice things.
No, it's I'll tell you off air. You're a real boys club stuff.
right. No, none of this electronic stuff is actually that easy when you start talking about how many friggin' parks there are. I mean, if you're talking about the 30 parks, yeah, we got that. We put it in and they did a good job. But then you start talking about minor leagues and spring training facilities and, it's not surprising that not all of them have it. But I would like it.
Can we get camera angles too that are not acting like the shortstop? That would be wonderful. Pittsburgh's figured this out.
I love those ones where there's where the pitcher is over here and the hitter's over here, and you're just like,
the worst.
Is this how people perceive baseball?
That's the bases loaded
like,
too from
not
NES
at all
camera
what baseball
shot.
is like.
It drives me
That's a
crazy.
good pull.
I don't know why they used that camera view in that game, but I mean, it was 1990, so what else were they supposed to do?
Which game had an angle like that?
Bases Loaded 2 had that angle.
Oh, man.
It was terrible. The game was fun, but the view was terrible. Where do you stand on Anderson versus Paddack, Alex?
Yeah, that's really, Paddack, Anderson is just super unique. I really spent a lot of time diving into him because he's really fascinating to me. He's got this really unique profile. Curveball has this 12-6 shape to it, but it doesn't get the movement of a 12-6 curveball. The changeup is, I think, what he calls a 3-finger changeup that doesn't get anywhere near the movement that you would expect that kind of changeup to get with that sort of efficiency. The fastball changeup release points are just identical. The extension is elite, especially on that curveball. And those kind of north-south mechanics don't personally have me as concerned then when it comes to the command. I think with him, I'm maybe a little bit more worried about what the Braves are going to do with him in terms of innings this year. When it comes to Paddack, I really think that last year, some of the difficulty that he had with that four-seamer was because of the curveball that he was working on, right? I think it just really changed. I was having a great conversation with Michael Ahedo about this, about what that did with his hand and what that did with his wrist. And what I think it caused it to get a little bit more ride, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, on that fastball there, which isn't necessarily what you want to see from Chris Paddack. So I love to see him when he was like, I was in the bathroom and I found this book by Bill James. You guys got to read this. I love that was essentially what his offseason was. So I think overall for me, I buy back on the Chris Paddack bounce back. But with that said, I think even if he gets that fastball back, I still need to see he's kind of where he was last year, where I still need to see him take a step forward with the breaking pitch. So I think I'm going to choose Anderson here as well.
Wow. It's Paddack for me. And the funniest thing is I was going to give praise to Ian Anderson. I love his mechanics. I love the fact that he's so north-south, that he rocks back and forth. And generally what you see with guys, especially like ones that have some walk issues at first, which Ian Anderson does. I mean, I think that's more of a case of approach, and he's not giving in when it comes to changeups and he's relying on guys chasing and stuff. but it's not erratic. It's not like he has that high walk rate, but it's not because he's throwing cross body. It's not like he's he doesn't know where the strike zone is, and I think over time that he will develop a much better walk rate than what you're seeing right now, which is like 10%. I think in the postseason it was like 13% for Ian Anderson, something like that. That will get better. And I actually think his minor league numbers too kind of aren't a great walk rate either. That back and forth, you see that, and you should be thinking, oh, it's a lot easier to adjust on your delivery of getting the ball where you want it to. So I think over time, I'm in on Ian Anderson. But I don't know. I think we're kind of looking at Chris Paddack's 2020 and thinking, aha, we were also wrong. This is, we jumped too soon on 140 innings from Paddack when his fastball was elite then. It was really, really amazing. He messed up with the spin axis. I think you're totally right, Fast, about him trying to work on the shape of the curveball. Ahedo was really smart, and I love him. And him thinking that kind of stuff, you listen when Michael Ahedo talks about that stuff. So I do like the fact, as you mentioned too, that Paddack all of a sudden hated analytics, and now he's like, oh wait, something about my spin axis that can actually fix me. I'm listening now. Great. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything about that.
I was like, did no one told you last year? I was shouting about it all year. Yeah. Like, where's the ride on this fastball? Can someone tell Paddack? He has a dad who's super involved too. And follows on Twitter and name searches. Though. I just figured the dad would have found me yelling about his ride.
Well, you have success for ages. You never care about that stuff. It's just me. And, I totally understand that mentality. And I think you need to have a full year of that and time to think that he can actually say, okay, maybe they have an answer.
He's also, he developed to some extent in an organization that I think at the time he was there, it was probably the worst organization for player development in baseball.
Oh, interesting. Fascinating. So I don't
think they are anymore, but I think they were when he was there.
Paddack has to be fixing this in some way. I mean, it is, as you mentioned, command was there. I wonder if the stuff metrics are just for 2020, or is it just for including 2019?
It's just for 2020. So I actually think that stuff number could change. I mean, because he used to have ride, and if he gets the ride, that'll change the stuff number. So
and that command is still there. So for me, I'm leaning Paddack.
I think it's
here.
elite command. Yeah.
I'm on Paddack too. The command's really good. I mean, look what he accomplished.
Come on by DVR. Let's go.
Look what he accomplished with flaws in 2019. I think we're blowing up Anderson's limited sample in 2020 and probably rounding up too much just as we're rounding down on Paddack. So for me, it's Paddack by not a lot, but by a healthy enough margin where I'm not taking the full minute to make that pick.
There we go. Yeah, no,
good job,
great
guys.
point. Paddack was good. It wasn't terrible in 2020. It had still a 120 and change whip, and he had some strikeouts. It wasn't, Patrick Corbin's 2020, where that was really oh no, what's going on? Paddack was still actually somewhat serviceable, and we think he should be much better. So that's a great point, DVR.
You didn't have Corbin low enough, dude.
Well,
just saying.
I knew you guys want to talk about Corbin. Somehow I knew. So one last toss up before we go.
Oh, he's in there. All right.
Last one. Sixto Sánchez versus Patrick Corbin, which is totally just a young on the rise versus old and possibly declining.
So easy. That's 60.
Okay.
I don't even have to think twice. I would leap out of my chair and mash the button so hard for Sixto Sánchez. You couldn't stop me. You couldn't be in between me and my computer.
That's actually a great notion. The one way to draft isn't who clicks the button first, but how many times the person clicks the button.
You got to get a mechanical keyboard, those red switches, the actuation point. All right. Really quickly on Sixto versus Corbin. Okay. Very quick. I don't think the Marlins are going to push Sixto a ton. I think his sinker isn't that great, and he should be throwing more four seamers, and his sinker is much easier to hit. I think Z contact was 94% last year in the sinker, while four seamer was under 80%, 74, something crazy like that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the 98.
Yeah, there it is. Well, it was still hittable, but he's throwing right. If he just throws a four seamer at 98, then I'm much more in. I don't think he actually has really good slider command. Changeup's good, but sliders, the good ones I saw were mistakes that actually landed at the ankles of lefties, and he wasn't actually trying to do that. On the other side, Corbin, he had a bad 2020. I get it. His velocity was low at the beginning, and he wasn't able to get it inside to righties like he used to. He got better as it went on with that velocity. So far this spring, his velocity is already up a full tick from last year. This was someone who we considered top 15 entering 2019 and 20. I mean, 2018 and 2019 were like 200 innings of dominance from Patrick Corbin. His slider fell back on its whiff rate last year, about 10 points because of the fastball. He needs the fastball to make the slider work. And I'm willing to kind of throw it away. I don't think he had. I think 2020 lost his fastball. It's 2021 now.
Well, he also lost his fastball in 2019 and then came back and said, I lost my fastball, and then he got it again. And then he dominated. He was great. He went off on this absolutely disgusting stretch. He's also got a new cutter that he's working on in spring training that, I'm trying to do my best to temper all expectations about every time I hear a new pitch. So like Aaron Nola also has,
but he could really use a new pitch.
Yes. Yeah. He needs a strike getting pitch. He needs something else to throw that gets him.
Like Ottavino has like actually a similar-ish repertoire, right? Just from the right. Mm-hmm. And Ottavino needed that cutter to kind of just land in between the other two pitches, kind of 0-0.
So
but there's this one piece of data that's interesting that actually makes the case for both of these guys in a weird way. On the fastball, from 90 to 94, there's actually not that much difference between each mile per hour. So if you look at home run rates and whiff rates on fastballs just by velocity, between 90 and 94, they're fairly stagnant. There's a little bit of a gain for each of them. From 94 plus, it goes out the roof. And it just peaks, it goes up. So Sixto, I would expect to whiff more people just based on the velo alone, because he sits above 94. So he's dude, the lefty hasn't sniffed 94 in a few years. So if he's living in the 90 to 94 range, as long as he's not throwing 88s and 89s up there, then theoretically there shouldn't be that much of a difference between Patrick Corbin at 92 versus 91.5 versus whatever. So it's just about limiting the 88s and 89s. So if he can, sit 91, he might be fine.
Yeah. It's go ahead, Nick.
I mean, I'm hoping for it. It's a mix of look, I'll say this. I am going to push down Corbin when I put it out on Wednesday. I still will be above Sixto.
Really?
Sixto. I mean, it's the innings and the fact that, look, he didn't go out and strike everyone out last year.
Yeah, true.
And he had one game of 10 strikeouts and then not another one above 6. And I think
he's also a change-up product. He's like a change-up sinker guy, right? So
yeah, and I don't like his.
It may not be an amazing whiffs package.
Look, we've seen it from Dustin May. Just because you throw hard doesn't mean necessarily that it's good, especially if it's a sinker. Alcantara, yes.
I mean, it'll limit the homers.
Sure, but we don't.
Probably
want
pretty
that
hard to
from
turn
Sixto.
that one around.
I don't want a 21%, 22% strikeout rate from Sixto. I want him to push 25 to 30. Mm-hmm. And if that's what I'm getting from Sixto, then this. It's just not quite done yet. So
I think he's got more secondaries than May. So I think
I'm with you there.
Yeah. Here's, I had such a sick burn planned when Eno was like, I can't hear you over the 98. I was like, well, why don't you turn up that 20% K rate? But now it's totally past. No, you're being kind now. It's past that point. I think there's a bunch of other secondary. I'm with Nick on this. I think there's some other secondary factors too. And also to harken back to another argument that was made earlier, a guy can't be that. You said a guy can't be in the top 40 unless you've seen that he's done that before. But it's kind of that argument with Sánchez too, where I really want to see him do it over a prolonged period of time. And then other smaller secondary factors, a little bit more sure of Patrick Corbin getting wins than I am Sixto Sánchez. Little more sure of Patrick Corbin getting those innings pitched than I am Sixto Sánchez. It scares me a little bit when you're already saying, hey, why did the Marlins tell Sandy Alcantara to get away from that sinker and go to that four-seamer instead? That scares me a little bit more as well. So I think at the end of the day, I buy more at a Patrick Corbin bounce back than I do a Sixto Sánchez repeating. I think it is definitely close. And I think, I can do the cop out that it comes down to team construction, that if, you've got a few guys who are going to throw a lot of innings, you've loaded it up on your Lance Lynn's or whatever, and you want that kind of fun upside, that's a fun play. But if you've done the opposite and I think it's actually okay to go with Patrick Corbin. I think he's going to be okay this year.
I'm Sixto over Corbin, but I have to move Corbin up. I had him 46th among starters. That's too low. He should probably
you guys convinced me to move him up.
Yes.
Let's
But
go.
I do think Fast probably has kind of the sweet spot. Like if you already have a young group of starters with some ceiling already and you need that stability, Corbin probably makes more sense. Yeah, like, innings might be the priority there. If you're chasing wins a little bit, I mean, Nats versus Marlins win probabilities on Corbin should be a lot higher because they're not going to baby him. If Sixto's getting babied, he's leaving games earlier and he's on a weaker team with a worse bullpen somehow. I think the Marlins actually have a worse bullpen than the Nats, so that could be a problem as well.
I'm looking at this. I'm gonna have Sixto and Corbin like 2 picks apart, probably. It's super close. Sorry, just wanted to add that in there because I'm moving up Sixto from 39 likely to like 36, 35.
I'm going the opposite. I'm tanking Sixto now just to be a jerk.
Well, I still have some air between them, but I moved Sixto down a little bit because of you guys, and Corbin up. And now I've got them 10 apart, 12 apart. It's still a mash the button for me.
Well, the good news is we're all still friends after all of this. Okay, we're still laughing, still having a good time. Hopefully,
I could do this for another 3 hours.
Oh,
man.
I know, right?
Yeah,
This is the best.
It'd be the longest edit ever, but it'd be the most fun. So I mean, there's pros and cons, but mostly pros, I think, in this case. Nick, before we go, let everybody know where they can follow you on Twitter and what they can expect from both the Pitcher List pod and actually from the site here in these next few weeks.
Oh man, I wrote out my content schedule on this whiteboard. It's like 10 articles over the next 3 weeks. So definitely check that out. Updating the pitcher ranks. My entire, I think it's like called the Ultimate Draft Guide for 2021 comes out next week, which is really fun. But yeah, follow me at Pitcher List. Bother me all the time, please do. And yeah, check out Nick Pollack and friends. Eno was on there, and hopefully Derek, I can get you on there as well at some point. But yeah, lots of fun stuff, and give Alex a follow wherever that is. I don't know where it is. Fast.
I guess that's my segue. I like that. Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at AlexFast8, and I would definitely be remiss to say a quick, I'm very glad that I bought those bots so we could come on here and have this conversation with you. But in all, to be 100% earnest, you guys rightfully won that tournament,
Yes.
and it's because you guys are the best in the biz, and we look up to both of you so much, and I can't tell you just how giddy Nick and I were to be able to have this opportunity to do this with you guys. You guys, we really think of the world of you. We look up to you so much. So this has been such a blast for us. So thanks so much for having us. It's been great.
Really,
you guys would have deserved to win too. Like you won last year.
Hey,
that's only because somehow. Only because
I was
somehow
expecting you guys to win.
No, absolutely not, man. You guys are really like you're the torch bearers for the rest of us, And this was unbelievable. Really, we cannot thank you enough for this.
Well, we appreciate you guys joining us and for sharing the crown with us in the Baseball Pods bracket. And we'll see what happens next year if the bots just destroy it from the first round or if we actually make it all the way through. But it was a lot of fun.
We can't
being
have
part
nice
of it.
things.
No, we really can't. But follow him on Twitter at AlexFast8, at PitcherList. Of course, is at Saris. I am at Derek Van Riper. You can drop us an email, ratesandbarrels@theathletic.com. Of course, we appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a nice rating and review. And I would be a fool if I didn't mention that with March Madness starting this week, starting Tuesday, March 16th, we have Daily Ding, the Ding U, presented by BetMGM. Check that out on YouTube, 1 p.m. Eastern if you want to watch it live or listen to the Daily Ding podcast. Get everything you need to be caught up for March Madness. Best time of year because we got opening day in a few weeks, but we also have some college basketball to help bridge the gap through the final weeks of spring training. For Alex Fast and Nick Pollack and Eno Saris, I'm Derek Van Riper. That is going to wrap things up for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.